If I told you that younger women don't chase older men because of money, status, or confidence, if I told you that the real reason is something far more unsettling, far more primal, far more rare, would you believe me? Because today, what you're about to hear is not the usual motivational fluff, not the cliches you've already scrolled past 1,000 times. This is the kind of truth that disrupts your assumptions, challenges your ego, and forces you to ask yourself whether you've actually been living as a man or just playing the role of one. You think women are impressed by age. No, they're impressed by evolution. They're impressed by the man who has broken the patterns that 99% of men are trapped in. The man who no longer chases validation, no longer negotiates his worth, and no longer begs the world to notice him. Because when a man reaches that level of inner power, he becomes something that modern society rarely produces anymore: a man with direction, presence, and a mind that cannot be manipulated. And the shocking part, younger women recognize this faster than anyone else. They sense it before you speak, they feel it before you even look at them, and they respond to it in ways that most men will never understand. If you truly want to know why girls chase older guys, and why this one shift can change everything about how the world responds to you, then stay exactly where you are, because the next few minutes will expose the psychology no one talks about, the psychology that separates the men who are ignored from the men who are genuinely desired. And once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. When you start observing human relationships with a clear, unemotional lens, something becomes obvious very quickly. Most men are not rejected because of their looks, age, or financial status. They're rejected because they are emotionally chaotic. They react too quickly, feel too deeply, panic too easily, and attach too fast. And nothing repels a woman, especially a younger woman, faster than a man who cannot regulate himself. She doesn't run from him because he's bad. She runs because he feels unsafe. Not physically, but psychologically. He feels unstable. And whether she can articulate it or not, she senses it instantly. Emotional instability is loud. Emotional self-governance is magnetic. You have to understand something crucial about feminine psychology. A woman doesn't judge you by what you say. She judges you by how you respond to the situations around you. When she pulls back, do you collapse? When she tests you, do you take it personally? When you feel ignored, do you beg for her attention? When you feel insecure, do you start competing, chasing, or proving yourself? These reactions reveal more than any words ever could. They show her whether you're a man who leads his emotions or a man who is led by them. And deep down, every woman wants a man who knows how to hold himself before he tries to hold her. Girls chase emotionally self-governed men because these men offer something extremely rare in a world filled with impulsive behavior: stability, not robotic calmness, not indifference, but the ability to stay centered when most men fall apart. It's the difference between emotional maturity and emotional dependency. The dependent man uses women to soothe his insecurities. The mature man faces them alone. The dependent man gets threatened when he feels replaced. The mature man knows his worth is not negotiable. The dependent man needs reassurance. The mature man chooses clarity. And the moment a woman senses that you don't need her approval to feel grounded, you instantly become far more attractive than any man who tries to buy his relevance with effort, compliments, or constant attention. Younger women, especially, are drawn to this quality because most men their age are emotional roller coasters. Every small misunderstanding turns into panic. Every silence becomes fear. Every minor rejection becomes a crisis. When an older man shows up with emotional sovereignty, he feels like a different species altogether. He doesn't interpret everything as a threat. He doesn't rush to label, fix, or chase. He observes, he evaluates, he responds. His calmness is not passive, it's powerful. His silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. His boundaries aren't harsh, they're intentional. He leads himself in a way that makes her feel she can trust his direction. Girls don't chase men who chase them. They chase men who are in control of their internal world. Think about it. When you meet a man who is genuinely grounded, you can feel it without him saying a word. He walks differently. He speaks with a certain measured weight. He pauses without panicking. He listens without rushing to defend himself. He doesn't need to raise his voice because his authority isn't in the volume. It's in the structure of his mind. Emotional self-governance is a kind of quiet power that builds itself from within, and women, especially younger ones, pick up on it almost instantly. This is why girls will chase the man who can stay calm in chaos. When she tests you, it's not because she wants to win, it's because she wants to understand you. She wants to see if your presence is solid or if it's just a performance. She observes everything: the way you respond to stress, the way you handle disagreement, the way you speak when you're frustrated, the way you act when you feel challenged. She's not looking for perfection, she's looking for emotional security. She wants to know whether you can be trusted with her vulnerability, and she can only decide that when she sees how you handle your own. This is where most men fail. They think attraction is built through effort, when in reality, it is built through energy. If your energy is frantic, she will distance herself. If your energy is stable, she will lean in. If your energy is dependent, she will pull away. If your energy is sovereign, she will pursue. Women do not chase men who need them. They chase men they feel safe to surrender to. And safety doesn't come from dominance, money, age, or charm. It comes from emotional leadership. The emotionally self-governed man doesn't lose himself when he likes someone. He doesn't abandon his values to gain acceptance. He doesn't adjust his entire life to accommodate someone who hasn't earned access to him. He respects his energy, his time, and his peace. He knows his emotions but doesn't let them drive the car. He expresses interest without giving up his inner authority. He cares without losing control. He gives without emptying himself. And this balance is the reason girls chase him. They can feel that he chooses them, but doesn't need them to complete him. When a man like this enters a woman's life, he becomes the emotional gravity she orbits around. Not because he demands it, but because he embodies it. His stability makes her feel more feminine. His calmness deepens her curiosity. His emotional clarity makes her respect him. His boundaries make her feel guided. She doesn't chase him because he's older. She chases him because he's anchored. The moment you stop reacting and start responding, your entire presence changes. And so does the way women interact with you. The moment you stop needing reassurance and start offering direction, you shift from being another option to becoming the standard. The moment you stop seeking validation, women begin seeking your attention. The emotionally governed man doesn't win because he tries harder. He wins because he stands still when others collapse. And that stillness, that inner firmness, is the exact quality that makes girls not only attracted, but invested. They want to be near the man who offers what the world around them lacks: emotional stability, psychological depth, and the kind of masculine energy that doesn't fluctuate with circumstances. You don't become this man by pretending to be strong. You become him by confronting your own emotional chaos, by learning to soothe yourself, by gaining mastery over your impulses. Emotional leadership is the foundation of attraction, the essence of masculinity, and the reason why girls chase older men who have truly matured beyond the boyish need for validation. In the end, it all comes down to one truth. When you control yourself, you control the dynamic. When you master your emotions, you master the connection. And when you own your inner world, the outer world begins to respond to you. Be the man who leads himself, and she will naturally follow. When people try to explain why younger women are drawn to older men, they almost always point to the wrong factors. They talk about money, status, experience, or material comfort. But if you've ever paid attention to the truth beneath those surface arguments, you'll notice something far more powerful at play. Younger women aren't chasing older men because of what they have. They're chasing them because of how they carry themselves. There's a certain depth, a certain groundedness, a certain emotional authority that naturally emerges when a man matures psychologically, not just biologically. And that energy is rare in the modern world, which makes it unbelievably attractive. Attraction is not built on age. Age is merely a number. Energy is the currency. What younger women respond to is the frequency of a man's presence, the tone of his mind, the stability of his emotions, the clarity of his worldview. Younger men often operate with impulsive energy. They act fast, react instinctively, and speak before thinking. They move with urgency instead of intention. And while that can be exciting, it lacks depth. It lacks grounding. It lacks the kind of masculine structure that makes a woman feel she can lean into the connection without losing her footing. In contrast, older men, those who have truly grown emotionally, move differently. Their energy is calmer, more intentional, more self-assured. They're not trying to prove themselves in every conversation. They're not trying to be liked by everyone in the room. They're not performing masculinity, they're embodying it. And this difference in energy is what younger women pick up on instantly. You can fake confidence, but you cannot fake groundedness. Groundedness is felt, not shown. It's something that radiates from the way you breathe, pause, observe, and respond. Younger women have lived around men who rush everything, rush relationships, rush intimacy, rush decisions, rush emotions. So when they encounter a man who slows down, who listens, who thinks, who doesn't jump at every impulse, who isn't controlled by the need to impress or dominate, they experience a kind of stability that feels refreshing, even unfamiliar. They're drawn to that sense of emotional gravity. It gives them something to trust, something to respect, something to explore. And that exploration becomes the beginning of attraction. What makes this dynamic even more profound is that younger women don't consciously seek older men. They seek the energy older men tend to develop. When a woman feels a man's grounded presence, she automatically feels more feminine. When she feels his composure, she naturally becomes more expressive. When she feels his clarity, she becomes more open. It's not manipulation, it's energetic alignment. Masculine stability invites feminine fluidity. Masculine stillness amplifies feminine warmth. It's a natural polarity that creates connection without effort. And this is the paradox most men never understand. The less you try to be attractive, the more attractive you become. If your energy is mature, when a man's presence is calm, consistent, and centered, a woman senses that he is not controlled by external circumstances. He's not anxious about what she thinks. He's not desperate for attention. He's not scared of silence or discomfort. He doesn't need to fill the air with noise to feel relevant. His energy alone says everything, and that silent communication is exactly what younger women respond to. Age does not make a man mature. Many older men remain emotionally young. Many younger men carry a depth far beyond their years. But what differentiates the attractive man from the forgettable one is the level of self-mastery he has cultivated. Maturity is not when a man turns older. Maturity is when a man turns inward. When he understands why he feels what he feels. When he learns to regulate his impulses. When he stops being a slave to his insecurities, when he recognizes his triggers and does not project them on others, when he chooses clarity over chaos, direction over distraction, purpose over pleasure. Younger women are drawn to older men who embody this psychological maturity because it stands in sharp contrast to the emotional turbulence they often experience from younger partners. Consistency is a form of emotional luxury. Stability is a form of emotional strength, and depth is a form of emotional intelligence. When a man carries these traits, age becomes irrelevant. What matters is the quality of his presence, not the number of years he's lived. And here's the part that shocks most men: mature energy is not something you get simply by aging. It's something you build. You don't automatically become grounded by turning 30, 40, or 50. You become grounded when you learn to slow your reactions, confront your fears, discipline your emotions, and understand yourself deeply. Many men grow older without ever growing up, but the ones who do grow up, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, naturally become the kind of men younger women are drawn to, because a younger woman doesn't want chaos. She doesn't want inconsistency. She doesn't want emotional instability. What she wants is a man whose inner world is structured enough for her to trust him. She wants to feel like she can step into his energy without getting lost. She wants a man who doesn't drown her with insecurity or overwhelm her with emotional volatility. She wants a man who leads, not by control, but by example. A man whose inner peace becomes her emotional anchor. This is why feminine energy becomes energized around mature masculine energy. Not older, but mature. Not controlling, but grounded. Not loud, but intentional. Not aggressive, but strong. When you have that presence, she feels safe enough to relax, expressive enough to open up, and confident enough to pursue you instead of waiting for you to chase her. And the most remarkable part is that this entire dynamic exists without effort. You don't attract her with moves, lines, strategies, or tactics. You attract her through energy, and energy does not lie. When you embody mature, grounded masculine presence, you become the rare man who stands out not because he is older, but because he is centered. Not because he impresses, but because he aligns. Not because he tries, but because he is. And if there is one thing younger women consistently seek, whether they admit it or not, it is this: emotional stability wrapped in masculine clarity. Because in a world full of noise, distraction, and confusion, a grounded man becomes unforgettable. So understand this clearly. It's not your age that makes you attractive. It's the depth you've built within yourself. Master your energy, and youth will chase your maturity. One of the greatest misunderstandings men have about attraction is that they think women want attention more than anything else. They assume the more attention they give, the more interest a woman will feel. But the truth is far more complex and far more counterintuitive. A woman is not drawn to the man who gives her attention. She is drawn to the man whose attention means something, and your attention only has value when it is rare, intentional, and rooted in self-respect. When a man lives in a constant state of needing validation, he becomes predictable, and predictability is the death of attraction. Women don't chase predictable men, they chase men who have internal value, men who are not addicted to being noticed. Most men don't realize how deeply women can sense a man's relationship with his own worth. You can say all the right words, you can present yourself in the right way, but if underneath all of it you are still seeking approval, a woman can detect it instantly. She can feel when your compliments are coming from insecurity instead of confidence. She can feel when your interest is coming from emptiness instead of abundance. She can feel when you are trying to win her because you don't know how to win yourself. And as soon as she senses that your self-esteem depends on her response, she loses respect for the connection, even if she doesn't verbalize it. This is why the rarest kind of man, the man who becomes magnetic, the man who younger women find unexpectedly compelling, is the man who does not need the spotlight to feel powerful. He doesn't need to be the center of attention because he is already centered within himself. He is not chasing external validation because his internal validation is strong enough to structure his decisions. He is not trying to impress anyone because he is already impressed by the man he is becoming. This internal solidity changes everything about how he moves in the world. When a man is truly self-contained, his presence feels different. He speaks with clarity because he's not trying to manipulate a reaction. He listens deeply because he's not waiting for an opportunity to prove himself. He maintains boundaries without fear because he doesn't rely on someone else's approval to feel whole. Women pick up on this immediately, And what surprises them most is how refreshing it feels to meet a man who is not desperate for their attention. The psychology behind this dynamic is simple: humans are wired to value what is scarce. When a man gives his attention freely to everyone, it loses significance. But when a man gives his attention selectively, intentionally, and consciously, it becomes meaningful. Women don't want to be drowned in attention. They want to earn it. They want to feel chosen, not by a man who chooses everyone, but by a man who does not give his emotional energy away cheaply. This is why the man who doesn't live for attention becomes the man who gains it effortlessly. Think about how dominance works in nature. The strongest animals are not the ones making noise all day. The strongest ones move calmly, silently, confidently. They do not announce their presence because their presence speaks for itself. They don't seek validation, they embody it. And the others sense their power without a single roar. The same applies to masculinity. A man who is grounded doesn't need to display his strength. The strength is felt in how he carries himself. And women, especially younger women, are attuned to this kind of energy. This doesn't mean you should be cold or detached. It doesn't mean you should withhold attention as a manipulation tactic. It means your attention must come from a place of strength, not desperation. When your attention comes from stability, a woman feels admired. When it comes from insecurity, she feels responsible for managing your emotions. And that burden kills attraction. A woman doesn't want to be your emotional savior. She wants to be the recipient of your chosen focus, not the reason you feel complete. This is why presence is more powerful than performance. Most men think they have to dazzle, entertain, impress, or overwhelm a woman with effort. But women don't fall for effort. They fall for energy. And if your energy communicates, "I am enough with or without you," she feels something she rarely feels: curiosity. She wants to understand you. She wants to get closer. She wants access to your world. Not because you tried to pull her in, but because she felt pulled without you trying. You see, when a man doesn't rely on external validation, his behavior becomes unpredictable in the best possible way. Not inconsistent, not unstable, but free. He isn't governed by the need to please. He isn't controlled by the fear of losing her. He isn't shaped by the opinions of others. He acts from his own principles, his own standards, his own values. And this authenticity creates a gravitational pull. Women admire men who move from truth, not from emotional hunger. And the irony is that the man who doesn't chase attention ends up receiving the most of it. Because his energy stands out, his silence is intriguing, his confidence is subtle, his boundaries are clear, his presence is calm, his emotions are steady. In a world where everyone is trying to be noticed, the man who no longer needs to be noticed becomes the one everyone notices. Younger women, especially, are drawn to this because it represents a level of masculine maturity they rarely see. They want to feel anchored, not overwhelmed. They want strength, not dependency. They want depth, not performance. And the man who doesn't need attention to validate himself becomes a symbol of emotional safety and masculine depth. When a woman senses that your internal world is strong enough to stand without her approval, she naturally begins to invest more. Not because you manipulated her, but because you inspired her. Connection becomes meaningful when both people choose each other freely. Not because they need each other, but because they respect each other. Your job as a man is not to convince her to want you. Your job is to become the kind of man who is worth wanting. Through your inner stability, through your emotional sovereignty, through your refusal to live at the mercy of external validation. When you master this, attention comes effortlessly, interest comes naturally, attraction becomes mutual rather than forced. Because the moment you stop needing validation is the moment you become validated by the world around you. Be the man whose value is internal, not borrowed. Silence the need to be noticed, and you'll become unforgettable. One of the most misunderstood truths in attraction is the belief that women chase men who have everything: money, looks, status, power, prestige. Men spend years building external achievements, thinking that if they finally accumulate enough, the right woman will appear and choose them. But life doesn't work like that. Women aren't drawn to men who have everything. They're drawn to men who have themselves. A man who owns his mind, controls his emotions, understands his value, and lives with intention is far more compelling than a man who simply flaunts external success. Because the truth is, a man can have all the symbols of success and still be internally lost. He can have a nice car but no direction. He can have money but no clarity. He can have a good appearance but no confidence. And younger women, who are especially intuitive when it comes to emotional energy, can feel this misalignment instantly. They're not impressed by the surface anymore. The world is full of attractive men who are emotionally hollow. The rare thing, the thing that deeply attracts a younger woman, is a man who is rooted in himself. A man who doesn't collapse under pressure. A man who doesn't lose his identity in a relationship. A man who doesn't depend on external things to feel internally worthy. When a man has himself, it means he has sovereignty over his own life. He makes decisions based on principles, not fear. He chooses relationships from abundance, not desperation. He sets boundaries without guilt. He communicates with clarity, not emotional chaos. His emotional state doesn't fluctuate with someone else's behavior. Younger women feel this kind of presence and naturally gravitate toward it because it offers something they rarely experience in their age group: masculine consistency. You see, younger men often confuse attachment with intimacy, obsession with love, and control with leadership. They chase validation because they haven't built internal validation. But a man who has himself doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't compromise his values to secure attention. His identity isn't shaped by emotional highs and lows. And this steadiness is exactly what makes him magnetic. Feminine energy feels safe with masculine stability. It's a psychological truth rooted in human biology and emotional psychology. A woman doesn't want to carry a man's insecurities. She wants to be guided by a man who has already confronted and tamed his own. A man who has himself doesn't let fear dictate his relationships. He knows that rejection is not a reflection of his worth, but simply a misalignment. He knows that attraction cannot be forced, only inspired. He knows that love is not something you chase, but something you create through your character. This kind of mindset makes him incredibly attractive because he doesn't bring emotional weight into the connection. He brings clarity. The more a man owns himself, the less he needs to perform. His silence speaks, his presence speaks, his actions speak. He doesn't need approval because he operates from internal certainty. And this internal certainty makes a younger woman feel that she is dealing with a man who is not trying to be something. He simply is. That authenticity creates a level of trust and attraction that external qualities can never replace. When a man has himself, he is selective, not desperate. He chooses who he invests in. He doesn't give his energy freely to anyone who demands it. This is important because women are naturally drawn to men whose attention feels earned. Not because he plays games, but because he holds his value, and younger women especially seek men whose energy feels intentional, not scattered. A man who knows himself knows how to protect his peace, and that protection of inner peace becomes a form of quiet authority. Most men think that being desired is about having more muscles, more money, more style, more status, but desire is not built on excess. It is built on essence. Your essence is the emotional signature you project. It's the energy that walks into the room before you do. And when your essence is strong, grounded, confident, and aligned, you stand out without trying. You become the presence that doesn't need validation because it already carries self-worth. Younger women find this deeply attractive because a man who has himself gives them space to be themselves. He doesn't suffocate them with neediness. He doesn't demand constant reassurance. He doesn't lose control when she sets boundaries. He doesn't panic when she takes time for herself. He doesn't crumble when things get confusing. Instead, he stays centered. He stays calm. He stays aligned. And this emotional composure is what makes her curious, what makes her invested, what makes her chase. Because chasing doesn't come from pressure, it comes from admiration. A woman only pursues when she feels that a man is her equal or above in emotional stability. And the man who has himself operates from such a strong internal foundation that she cannot help but respect him. Attraction is not random. It is structured. It is the result of psychological polarity. Feminine energy moves toward masculine self-possession the same way a river flows toward the ocean. It is natural, effortless, instinctive. The man who has himself becomes a mirror for a woman's deeper desires. He reflects the masculine stability she longs for. He reminds her of what it feels like to melt, to trust, to relax, to surrender. And he can provide that experience because he is not fighting internal battles. He has confronted them. He has studied them. He has tamed them. A woman's attraction intensifies when she realizes she is dealing with a man who is not emotionally leaking everywhere. A man who is not insecure, reactive, or unstable. A man who is whole. This is why younger women chase older men who have themselves, not because of age, but because of internal mastery. That mastery gives them a sense of direction, purpose, and presence that younger men rarely possess. And that sense of direction creates emotional safety. So understand this clearly: women do not chase men who have the world. They chase men who have themselves. When you own your identity, you stop seeking permission to be the man you were meant to be. And when a man becomes whole within, the world around him begins to move in his direction. Because the moment you become enough for yourself, you become irresistible to others.